everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
My name is Alex Morrison, and I've spent the last 4 years watching my younger sister build a tech empire on my money while she mocked me at every family gathering. The irony wasn't lost on me. But irony doesn't pay the bills. My $6.7 million investment did. At least it had been paying Sarah's bills. Past tense. Let me back up. Sarah Morrison was born brilliant. Not just smart, brilliant. Accepted to MIT at 16. Published her first AI research paper at 19. Founded her first tech startup, TechVision Labs, at 23 with 2 partners from her graduate program. She was driven, charismatic, visionary. Everything a founder should be. She was also relentlessly convinced that she'd done it all herself. I'm Alex. 3 years older, decidedly less brilliant. I went to a state school for business administration. While Sarah was revolutionizing machine learning algorithms, I was building something much more boring. A portfolio of e-commerce stores selling practical products to practical people. Kitchen organizers. Ergonomic office supplies. Pet accessories. Nothing sexy. Nothing revolutionary. Just products that solved small problems for regular people who bought them over and over again. By the time I was 27, I had 12 profitable online stores running on streamlined systems with virtual assistants handling most of the operations. My gross revenue was $18 million annually. My profit margin was 34%. I was pulling in just over $6 million a year in personal income. I told no one. Especially not my family. Because in the Morrison family, there was only room for one successful daughter, and Sarah had claimed that role at birth. My parents, both professors at Berkeley, worshipped Sarah. Their youngest daughter, the prodigy. They hosted dinner parties where they'd casually mention our daughter at MIT, and Sarah's groundbreaking research, and the startup she founded. When people asked about me, Mom would smile kindly. Alex is still finding her path. He does some online selling. Crafts and things. Crafts and things. My $6 million annual income was crafts and things. I learned early that correcting this narrative wasn't worth the effort. Sarah was the star. I was the supporting character. That was the family structure, and challenging it would only make me look jealous or competitive. So I stayed quiet. Built my boring businesses. Made my boring money. And watched. In 2019, Sarah's startup hit a wall. TechVision Labs had developed impressive AI-powered analytics software, but they'd burned through their series of funding faster than expected. They needed a Series B round to scale. The problem? It was a bad time for fundraising. The market was cautious. Their tech was promising but unproven at scale. VCs were passing. Sarah called me in a panic one night. Real panic, not the performative kind she did at family dinners. Alex, I don't know what to do. Her voice was shaking. We have runway for maybe 4 more months. If we don't close this round, we're done. Everything I've built, gone. What about the VCs you've been talking to? They want to see traction we don't have yet. They want us to prove the model works at enterprise scale before they'll invest. But we can't scale without the money. It's a catch-22. I listened to her cry. My brilliant, untouchable little sister crying because her startup was failing. How much do you need? I asked. Our Series B is structured for $8 million. We've committed $1.3 million from existing investors. We need $6.7 million more. I did the math silently. I had $11 million in liquid assets across my various accounts. Investing $6.7 million would be aggressive but not catastrophic. And if TechVision succeeded, which it very well could with proper funding, the return could be substantial. But more than that, she was my sister. And she needed help. What if I could find you an investor? I said carefully. Alex, I've talked to everyone. Unless you know a whale, I don't. Let me make some calls. Give me 48 hours. What I did in those 48 hours was set up the most elaborate investment structure of my life. I worked with my wealth manager, Patricia Chin, to create an anonymous investment vehicle, Cascade Ventures LLC. A holding company with layers of legal structures designed to obscure the ultimate beneficial owner. Patricia became the named representative on all documents. Cascade Ventures offered TechVision Labs $6.7 million in Series B funding with reasonable terms, 18% equity, board observer rights, standard protective provisions. Sarah was ecstatic. Alex, I don't know what you said or who you talked to, but Cascade Ventures reached out. They want to invest the full amount we need. They're professional, serious, and their terms are fair. You're a miracle worker. I just made a few calls, I said. I never told her I was Cascade Ventures. I never told her I was her largest investor. I never told her that the professional investors she thought were backing her were actually her older sister writing checks from her boring e-commerce profits. Why didn't I tell her? Multiple reasons. First, I knew Sarah. If she knew the money came from me, from her crafts and things older sister, she'd never accept it. Her pride wouldn't allow it. She'd rather let her company die than take money from someone she viewed as less successful than herself. Second, I wanted to see if the company could actually succeed. Anonymous investment meant I got real board updates, real financials, real insight into whether TechVision was viable or just Sarah's expensive hobby. Third, and I'm not proud of this, I wanted to know what it felt like to be the secret power behind the throne. To be the one with actual control while everyone assumed I was powerless. The investment closed in March 2019. TechVision got its funding. Sarah got her runway. And I got my 18% equity stake and observer rights to every board meeting. Here's what happened over the next 4 years. TechVision Labs succeeded. Dramatically. Sarah's AI analytics platform took off. They landed enterprise clients. Microsoft, Amazon, 3 Fortune 500 companies. Their revenue went from $800,000 in 2019 to $23 million in 2023. They expanded from 8 employees to 127. They opened offices in San Francisco, New York, and Austin. Sarah became a tech darling. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. Invited to speak at conferences. Interviewed on podcasts about female founders breaking barriers in AI. My parents couldn't stop talking about her. Every Sunday dinner became a Sarah highlight reel. Did you see Sarah's TechCrunch interview? Sarah's hiring a chief revenue officer from Google. Sarah might do a Series C next year. The VCs are circling me. I was still doing my online thing. My businesses had grown too. By 2023, I had 17 e-commerce stores generating $31 million in annual revenue. My net worth had climbed to $24 million. I'd diversified into real estate and index funds. I was, by any objective measure, wildly successful. But at family dinners, I was still the sister who hadn't quite found her calling. The worst part. Sarah started to believe her own press. Started to believe she'd built TechVision entirely through her own brilliance, grit, and vision. She forgot about those desperate phone calls in 2019. Forgot how close she'd been to failure. Forgot that someone, some mysterious investor she'd never met, had believed in her when no one else would. Actually, scratch that. She didn't forget. She just rewrote the narrative in her mind where she'd convinced a sophisticated VC firm to take a chance on her through sheer force of personality and pitch deck excellence. At Thanksgiving 2022, she told the story. The Series B was brutal. But I knew our tech was solid. I knew we just needed one investor to see the vision. So I pitched Cascade Ventures and they got it. They saw what everyone else missed. That's the difference between mediocre investors and great ones. Vision. I smiled and passed the cranberry sauce. At Christmas 2022, Sarah gave me a gift. A book called The Side Hustle Millionaire. Turn Your Hobby into Income. I thought this might inspire you, she said sweetly. It's never too late to scale up your little online stores into something more serious. Look at what I've done with TechVision. You could do something similar, just, at your level. To my level. My boring, small-scale, unsophisticated level. I thanked her for the book. But something was shifting inside me. A slow-burning resentment that I'd been ignoring for years. Every condescending comment, every dismissive smile, every time she talked about real business versus my online thing. It was all accumulating. I started attending more TechVision board meetings via my observer rights. Watched Sarah present her growth metrics. Watched her take credit for strategic decisions that I'd quietly influenced through Patricia's feedback. Watched her become the person she'd always wanted to be. The brilliant founder who did it all herself. The breaking point came at a family dinner on October 15, 2023. It was supposed to be a celebration. Dad's birthday. Nothing special, just immediate family. Mom, Dad, Sarah, her boyfriend Derek, and me. Sarah arrived late, breathless and glowing. Sorry. Board meeting ran long. We're discussing the Series C timeline. Series C already? Mom beamed. Sweetheart, that's incredible. We're thinking early next year. Derek's firm might lead it. She smiled at Derek, a partner at a venture capital firm. Of course she was dating a VC. Of course. Dinner proceeded normally. Wine flowed. Dad opened presents. And then, over dessert, Sarah started talking about her success. You know what I'm most proud of? She said, leaning back in her chair. Building TechVision from literally nothing. No family money, no trust fund, no safety net. Just me, my co-founders, and our vision. I felt my jaw tighten. That's real entrepreneurship, Derek agreed. Not like these trust fund kids who play entrepreneur with daddy's money. Sarah laughed. Exactly. I remember pitching the Series B while I was eating ramen for dinner. That's the difference between real founders and people who are just playing business. Sarah's always been a self-starter, Dad said proudly. Even as a child. Remember when she built that robot for the science fair? I was 8, Sarah said laughing. And it barely worked. But yeah, I've always had that drive. That hunger to build something real. Something real. Unlike my fake business apparently. Alex, you're quiet tonight, Mom noticed. Everything okay with your stores? Fine, I said. Just listening. You know, Alex, Sarah turned to me with what I'm sure she thought was helpful concern. If you ever want advice on scaling a business, I'm happy to share what I've learned. Going from startup to real company, there's a lot of mistakes you can avoid if you learn from someone who's done it. That's generous, I said evenly. I mean it. Your little online thing is cute, but if you want to turn it into a real business, you need to think bigger. Stop playing entrepreneur and actually become one. There was the phrase that detonated everything. Stop playing entrepreneur. From my sister. The one whose real business existed because of my $6.7 million investment. Playing entrepreneur, I repeated slowly. You know what I mean, Sarah said, not unkindly. You sell products online. That's great. It's income. But it's not the same as building a tech company, developing proprietary software, securing enterprise clients. That's real entrepreneurship. That's what separates hobbies from businesses. Derek nodded. There's definitely a hierarchy in the business world. E-commerce is entry-level. Tech startups are major league. Everyone laughed. Mom and Dad smiled indulgently. Sarah raised her wine glass in a mock toast. I smiled. Nodded quietly. You're right. Sarah looked pleased, like she'd done me a favor with her honesty. I pulled out my phone under the table and typed an email to Patricia Chin. Effective immediately, initiate withdrawal of Cascade Ventures' entire Series B investment from TechVision Labs. Prepare full exit documentation. I want the $6.7 million returned by end of month. Board notification Monday 9 a.m. I hit send. Then I looked up and said, Dad, this cake is delicious. Did you make it or is it store-bought? The conversation moved on. I finished my wine. When dinner ended, I hugged everyone goodbye, complimented Sarah's new coat and drove home. I slept better that night than I had in months. Sunday I spent the day with Patricia reviewing the withdrawal process. This will trigger massive disruption, Patricia warned. TechVision's Series B is fundamental to their current operations. Pulling $6.7 million will create an immediate cash crisis. I understand. Sarah will know something catastrophic has happened. The board will demand answers. This will be public, Alex. Messy. Good. Patricia studied me. We'd worked together for 8 years. She knew me. What did she say to you? I told her about dinner. About playing entrepreneur. About 4 years of condescension. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then, the withdrawal clause allows for exit with 30 days notice or immediate exit with board approval. Given TechVision's recent performance issues. What performance issues? She pulled up a report. Last quarter's numbers. Revenue is down 18% from projections. Client retention is slipping. Their burn rate is increasing. The board has been concerned but quiet about it. Sarah's been painting a rosier picture publicly than the reality. Of course she had. So we can make a case that immediate withdrawal is justified based on performance concerns? Absolutely. It's defensible. And legal. Draft everything. I want the email sent to the board Monday at 9 a.m. I want to be in the observer seat for the emergency meeting that follows. You're going to watch this happen in real time? I've earned the right. Monday, October 16th, 9:03 a.m. Patricia sent the email. By 9:47 a.m. I had 17 missed calls. The TechVision board was panicking. By 11:15 a.m., an emergency board meeting was called for 2 p.m. that afternoon. I joined via video link at 1:58 p.m. The board was already assembled. Sarah, her 2 co-founders, 3 board members and their legal counsel. Sarah looked like she'd been crying. Her hair was pulled back messily. No makeup. I'd never seen her look so undone. Patricia Chen from Cascade Ventures is joining us, the board chair announced. Patricia, thank you for making time on short notice. Patricia's face appeared on screen, professional and composed. Of course. We've received your notice of investment withdrawal, the chair continued carefully. This is unexpected. Can you walk us through Cascade's reasoning? Patricia began. Cascade Ventures has been monitoring TechVision's performance with growing concern. Q3 revenue declined 18% from projections. Client retention is down. Burn rate is increasing while growth is slowing. These metrics suggest systemic issues that were not disclosed during our initial due diligence or in subsequent board updates. Sarah's co-founder James jumped in. We've had some headwinds but nothing unusual for a scaling company. We're projecting strong Q4 recovery. Your projections have been optimistic for 3 consecutive quarters while actual performance has declined, Patricia said coolly. Cascade's mandate is evidence-based investment, not hope-based. This is absurd, Sarah said, her voice shaking. 1 tough quarter and you're abandoning us? What happened to patient capital? What happened to believing in the vision? Ms. Morrison, Patricia said, Cascade believed in TechVision's vision 4 years ago when no one else would. We provided $6.7 million in Series B funding when other investors passed. We've been patient through multiple pivots, strategy shifts, and market challenges. But patience has limits. Performance matters. You're going to destroy this company, Sarah said, tears in her voice. Pulling $6.7 million immediately, we can't absorb that. You know we can't. Our runway shrinks to 3 months. This is a death sentence. That's hyperbole, Patricia replied. TechVision has other options. Bridge financing. Revenue acceleration. Cost reduction. These are standard tools for companies facing capital constraints. In 3 months. With our burn rate. The board chair intervened. Patricia, is there any scenario where Cascade would reconsider? Extended timeline? Restructured terms? I watched Sarah's face. The desperation there. The panic. I remembered feeling exactly that way in 2019 when I'd begged for help with her Series B. When she'd been desperate and scared and vulnerable. But that Sarah had been grateful. Had been humble. Had remembered that someone had saved her. This Sarah had spent 4 years rewriting history. Erasing that gratitude. Convincing herself she'd done it all alone. Patricia looked directly at the camera. At me watching from my home office. I'll need to consult with Cascade's principals. But based on current performance and the concerning lack of transparency around declining metrics, I'm not optimistic. Please, Sarah said. Just give us a chance to course correct. We can fix this. I can fix this. Don't pull the funding. Please. The word hung there. Please. The same word she'd said to me 4 years ago when I'd offered to help. Patricia ended the meeting with a promise to respond within 48 hours. I sat in my silent office for a long time after the call ended. I didn't wait 48 hours. That evening I texted Sarah. We need to talk. My place. Tonight. She arrived at 8 p.m. looking wrecked. Her eyes were red. She was wearing sweatpants and an old MIT hoodie. Alex, I don't have time for family stuff right now, she said as she walked in. I'm in crisis mode. My biggest investor is pulling out and... I know, I said. I was in the board meeting this afternoon. She stopped. Stared at me. What? I have observer rights. I've been attending TechVision board meetings for 4 years. That's... Why would you... How? Sit down, Sarah. She sat looking completely confused. I pulled out a folder. Inside were documents. Lots of documents. Cascade Ventures LZ. I said, sliding the first paper across my coffee table. Registered in Delaware, March 2019. Ultimate beneficial owner, Alexandra Morrison. Sarah picked up the paper. Read it. Read it again. I don't understand. Cascade Ventures is me, Sarah. It's always been me. I'm your Series B investor. I'm the one who gave you $6.7 million when everyone else passed. I'm the one who's been sitting in every board meeting for 4 years watching you build a company on my money. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, anger. That's not possible. Cascade is a professional VC firm. Patricia Chen is my wealth manager. Has been for 8 years. She represents me on all major investments. You don't have that kind of money. You sell kitchen organizers online. I own 17 profitable e-commerce businesses generating $31 million in annual revenue. My net worth is approximately $24 million. The $6.7 million I invested in TechVision was about 28% of my liquid assets at the time. Sarah stood up. Sat down. Stood up again. This is insane. You're lying. Why would you? I slid more documents across. Bank statements. Investment records. The original Cascade Ventures formation documents with my signature. He read them all. Every single page. Her hands were shaking. Why? She finally whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never would have accepted the money if you knew it came from me. That's not. Yes, it is. Be honest, Sarah. If I'd called you in 2019 and said, hey, I have $6.7 million from my boring e-commerce stores, want it for your Series B? Would you have taken it? She was quiet. You would have said no, I continued. Because in your mind I'm the unsuccessful sister. The one who hasn't built anything real. Taking money from me would have meant admitting I was more successful than you. And you couldn't do that. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You know what you said to me at dinner Saturday night? Stop playing entrepreneur. You told me my business was cute but not real. You've spent 4 years dismissing everything I do while building your real company on my investment. Sarah's face was red. I didn't know. If I'd known. You should have known. I was standing now too. You should have asked. Is that you assumed? You assumed I was struggling because I wasn't flashy about my success. You assumed my business was small because I didn't brag about it. You assumed I needed your advice on scaling up when I'm generating 4 times your company's revenue. Alex. Every family dinner. Every condescending comment. Every piece of helpful advice. You were giving business tips to the person who was literally funding your business. Do you understand how insulting that was? How humiliating. He was crying now. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I thought I was helping. No. He thought you were superior. There's a difference. She collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. What are you going to do? Are you really pulling the funding? TechVision will die. Everything I've built. Everything we've built, I corrected. I own 18% of TechVision, Sarah. If it dies, I lose too. But maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe you need to feel what it's like to actually fail so you can understand what I saved you from. Please don't do this. She was begging now, just like in the board meeting. Please, Alex. I'll do anything. I'll apologize to everyone. I'll tell Mom and Dad the truth. I'll make this right. Just don't kill my company. I sat down across from her. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to call an all-hands meeting at TechVision tomorrow. You're going to tell the entire company the truth about Cascade Ventures. You're going to acknowledge that your sister, the one with the cute online stores, is your largest investor and has been for 4 years. Alex. You're going to tell Mom and Dad. You're going to tell Derek. You're going to post about it on LinkedIn. And you're going to spend the next month actually looking at the performance issues Patricia raised, because they're real and you've been hiding from them. And then you won't pull the funding? Then I'll consider it. But Sarah, here's the thing you need to understand. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because you need to learn that success isn't just about being brilliant. It's about being humble enough to see who's actually supporting you. It's about gratitude. It's about acknowledging that sometimes the people you look down on are the ones holding you up. She was quiet for a long time. I've been a terrible sister, she finally said. Yes. You have. I don't know if I can fix this. Then TechVision fails. and you start over. With humility this time. Sarah called the all-hands meeting Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but she recorded it and sent it to me. She stood in front of 127 employees and told them the truth. About Cascade Ventures. About me. About the Series B that saved the company. About 4 years of not knowing who had actually believed in them. I thought I'd built this company on my own vision and determination, she said, her voice shaking. But the truth is, I built it on my sister's belief in me. My sister, who I've spent 4 years condescending to and dismissing. My sister, whose business success I couldn't even see because I was too busy being impressed with myself. There were tears. Questions. But also, surprisingly, respect. Several employees approached Sarah afterward to say they appreciated her honesty. That admitting failure was harder than celebrating success. Sarah called Mom and Dad that night. I wasn't on the call, but Sarah told me later that Dad cried and Mom asked to speak to me immediately. I took Mom's call. Alexandra Morrison, Mom said, using my full name like she did when I was in trouble, "You've had $24 million and didn't tell us?" "I have $24 million because I didn't tell you," I replied. Every time I tried to talk about my business, you changed the subject to Sarah's accomplishments. So I stopped trying. Mom was quiet. Then, "That's not, we never meant." "I know you didn't mean it. But intentions don't change impact, Mom. I've spent years being invisible in this family while Sarah was the star. I made peace with it. But I'm not invisible anymore. I can't be." "We're proud of you," she said softly. "We should have shown it more. We should have asked more questions. We should have seen you." "Yeah," I said. "You should have." It wasn't forgiveness yet. But it was a start. December 1st, 2023. Sarah's promised month of accountability was up. I'd reviewed TechVision's corrected financials, their new burn rate projections, and their honest assessment of Q4 performance. The numbers were better. Not perfect, but better. More importantly, they were honest. I called Patricia. "Keep the funding in. But I want quarterly check-ins. Real ones. No more optimistic projections that don't match reality." And Sarah. "She's learning. Give her credit for that." Sarah and I met for coffee that afternoon. "I submitted the Forbes correction," she said. "My 30 under 30-foot profile will be updated to acknowledge Cascade Ventures and my sister's investment. It publishes next week." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I've been lying by omission for 4 years. Time to stop." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked for maybe the first time in our adult lives. She told me about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect. To be the brilliant one. To live up to Mom and Dad's expectations. I told her about the loneliness of being successful in silence. Of watching her take credit for a company I'd saved. We didn't fix everything. You don't undo 4 years of resentment in one conversation. But we started. It's June 2024 now. 8 months since that disastrous family dinner. TechVision is stable. Not perfect, but growing sustainably. Sarah hired a COO who's actually good at operations, which was never her strength anyway. Their Q1 numbers were solid. Real solid, not spin the narrative solid. Sarah and I have lunch monthly. We talk about business. Both businesses as equals. She's asked my advice on scaling sustainably. I've asked her advice on potentially developing proprietary software for my e-commerce operations. Last month, she introduced me at a tech conference as my sister Alex, who's built a $31 million e-commerce portfolio and who's been my secret weapon at TechVision for 4 years. The audience didn't know what to do with that. But Sarah was smiling. A real smile, not a performative one. Mom and Dad are adjusting. Dad actually asked about my business model last Sunday. Seemed genuinely interested. Mom told her book club that she has 2 entrepreneur daughters instead of 1. It's progress. Derek, Sarah's VC boyfriend, broke up with her in November. Apparently dating a founder who'd been bailed out by her e-commerce sister wasn't the look he wanted. Sarah cried for about a week, then said she was relieved. "He loved the idea of me," she said. The brilliant founder who did it all herself. When that story changed, he couldn't adjust. Good riddance. As for me, I'm still building my boring businesses. Still making my quiet money. Still not posting on LinkedIn about my wins or my wealth. But I'm not invisible anymore. Not to my family. Not to Sarah. And most importantly, not to myself. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the people who need to hear the truth the most are the ones least equipped to hear it kindly. Sometimes you have to stop being kind and start being honest. Sometimes you have to burn down the false narrative to make room for the real one. That I didn't want to pull my funding from TechVision. I didn't want to blow up Sarah's world. But I needed to stop being complicit in my own erasure. And Sarah? She needed to learn that brilliance without humility is just arrogance. That vision without gratitude is just entitlement. That you can't build an empire while standing on someone else's foundation and pretending you're on solid ground. He's learning now. We both are. Last week, Sarah sent me a text. Board meeting tomorrow. Want to actually attend instead of just observing? I smiled. I'll be there. Because here's the thing about being the anonymous investor. Eventually, anonymity becomes its own kind of cage. Eventually, you have to step into the light and own your power. I'm not playing entrepreneur anymore. I never was. I'm just doing what I've always done. Building real businesses, making real money, and supporting the people I love. The difference now? They finally know it. And that changes everything.